Jack Williams was reviewing security plans for a local business when his phone rang. He glanced at the unknown number and almost didn't answer. After 20 years in the Navy SEALs, he had learned to trust his instincts, and something made him. "Pick up the call, Mr. Williams? This is Dr. Martinez from Denver General Hospital. Your son Tommy has been brought in with a gunshot wound. You need to come here immediately." The words hit Jack like a physical blow. His hands trembled as he grabbed his keys, his mind racing with questions. How? Why? Who would hurt his son? Tommy was the most peaceful kid he knew, someone who spent his free time teaching children and helping elderly neighbors. During the drive to the hospital, Jack's military training kicked in. He forced himself to stay calm and think clearly. He called his business partner to cancel all meetings and then tried calling Tommy's phone. It went straight to voicemail, and hearing his son's cheerful voice on the recording made his chest tighten with worry. The hospital, Jack rushed through the emergency room doors. The staff could see the controlled panic in his eyes as he approached the front desk. "I'm Jack Williams. My son Tommy was brought in with a gunshot wound." The nurse looked up his information quickly. "Room 318. Dr. Martinez is waiting for you there." As Jack hurried through the hospital corridors, memories flashed through his mind. Tommy taking his first steps, learning to ride a bike, graduating high school with honors. This was supposed to be the kid's safe time, his chance to figure out what he wanted to do with his life without the dangers his father had faced. OVRSEAS, Dr. Martinez met him outside Tommy's room. She was a kind woman with tired eyes who had delivered news like this too many times. "Mr. Williams, your son is stable but in serious condition. The bullet entered his chest and caused significant internal damage. We've stopped the bleeding, but he'll need surgery." Jack felt his world spinning. "Can I see him?" "Of course. He's been asking for you." Inside the room, Tommy lay connected to various machines, his face pale but alert. When he saw his father, he managed a weak smile. "Dad, I'm okay. Don't look so worried." Jack sat beside the bed, taking his son's hand carefully. "What happened, buddy?" Tommy's voice was soft but clear as he explained the encounter with Officer Patterson. Jack listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each detail. "When Tommy finished, Jack was quiet for a long moment. "Dad, I did everything right. I was polite, I kept my hands visible, I offered to show my ID. I don't understand why he shot me." Jack squeezed his son's hand gently. "You did everything perfect, Tommy. This isn't your fault." Dr. Martinez returned with more information. "Mr. Williams, I should mention that several hospital staff recognized your family name. We have 3 veterans working here who served under your command in different operations. They wanted me to tell you that Tommy is getting the best possible care." This reminded Jack of something important. His phone had been buzzing with messages since he arrived at the hospital. Word traveled fast in the military community, especially when it involved family members of decorated veterans. The first message was from Chief Rodriguez, his former teammate who now lived in Colorado Springs. Jack heard about Tommy through the veteran network. "Whatever you need, brother." More messages followed. "Lieutenant Commander Chun from San Diego, Petty Officer Kim from Seattle, Master Chief Thompson from Virginia." Within 2 hours of the shooting, Jack's former SEAL team members were already making travel arrangements. Jack stepped into the hallway to make some calls. His first call was to Chief Rodriguez, who answered on the first ring. "Jack, how's the kid?" "He's stable, but it's serious." "Tony, something's not right about this whole thing. A cop shot my unarmed son for no reason." "I'm already in my car, brother. I'll be there in 2 hours." "Have you talked to the police yet?" "Not yet. I've been focused on Tommy." "Good. Don't talk to anyone until we're all there." "This smells like trouble." Jack's next call was to Chun, who was booking a flight from California. "Jack, I've been making some calls. Word is getting around about what happened. The team wants to know what you need." "I need the truth, Chun. My boy was walking home from work, and now he's fighting for his life in a hospital bed." "You'll have it. Kim is flying in tomorrow morning, and Thompson is driving from Denver. We're all coming." As Jack hung up, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. During his military service, he had always been the one leading the rescue missions, organizing the operations to help others. Now his team was coming to help him, and the feeling was both overwhelming and comforting. Back in Tommy's room, a nurse was checking his vital signs. She looked up when Jack entered. "Mr. Williams, I'm Jennifer. My husband served under you in Afghanistan. He wanted me to tell you that our entire family is praying for Tommy." Jack nodded gratefully. "Thank you. That means everything." As the evening wore on, Jack noticed something interesting. Hospital staff kept finding excuses to check on Tommy's room. A maintenance worker spent extra time fixing a light that wasn't broken. A cafeteria worker brought extra blankets. A security guard made frequent rounds past their door. Dr. Martinez explained it later. "Mr. Williams, your reputation precedes you. Everyone here knows what you did for our country. Some of these people lost family members overseas, and they know that people like Tommy come home safe because of people like you." This support felt good, but Jack's mind was focused on the bigger picture. His son had been shot by a police officer under suspicious circumstances. His military training told him that the next 48 hours would be critical, not just for Tommy's recovery, but for ensuring that the truth came out. Around midnight, Tommy was finally sleeping peacefully after his surgery. The doctor said it had gone well, but he would need several more operations and months of recovery. Jack sat in the uncomfortable hospital chair, watching his son's chest rise and fall steadily. His phone buzzed with another message, this time from Rodriguez. "Just arrived in town. Where do you want to meet?" Jack replied, "Hospital lobby. We need to talk." As he prepared to meet his old teammate, Jack thought about the officer who had shot his son. Patterson probably thought this was just another incident that would blow over. He probably didn't realize that he had just hurt the son of a man who spent 2 decades learning how to track down dangerous people in the most difficult places on earth. But Jack wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about justice. There was a difference, and his team would help him find it the right way. Tommy stirred in his sleep, and Jack leaned forward to check on him. "Don't worry, son," he whispered. "Dad's going to make sure the truth comes out. And I'm not going to do it alone." Jack Williams was reviewing security plans for a local business when his phone rang. He glanced at the unknown number and almost didn't answer. After 20 years in the Navy SEALs, he had learned to trust his instincts, and something made him pick up the call. "Mr. Williams? This is Dr. Martinez from Denver General Hospital. Your son Tommy has been brought in with a gunshot wound. You need to come here immediately." The words hit Jack like a physical blow. His hands trembled as he grabbed his keys, his mind racing with questions. How? Why? Who would hurt his son? Tommy was the most peaceful kid he knew, someone who spent his free time teaching children and helping elderly neighbors. During the drive to the hospital, Jack's military training kicked in. He forced himself to stay calm and think clearly. He called his business partner to cancel all meetings and then tried calling Tommy's phone. It went straight to voicemail, and hearing his son's cheerful voice on the recording made his chest tighten with worry. The hospital, Jack rushed through the emergency room doors. The staff could see the controlled panic in his eyes as he approached the front desk. "I'm Jack Williams. My son Tommy was brought in with a gunshot wound." The nurse looked up his information quickly. "Room 318. Dr. Martinez is waiting for you there." As Jack hurried through the hospital corridors, memories flashed through his mind. Tommy taking his first steps, learning to ride a bike, graduating high school with honors. This was supposed to be the kid's safe time, his chance to figure out what he wanted to do with his life without the dangers his father had faced. OVRSEAS, Dr. Martinez met him outside Tommy's room. She was a kind woman with tired eyes who had delivered news like this too many times. "Mr. Williams, your son is stable but in serious condition. The bullet entered his chest and caused significant internal damage. We've stopped the bleeding, but he'll need surgery." Jack felt his world spinning. "Can I see him?" "Of course. He's been asking for you." Inside the room, Tommy lay connected to various machines, his face pale but alert. When he saw his father, he managed a weak smile. "Dad, I'm okay. Don't look so worried." Jack sat beside the bed, taking his son's hand carefully. "What happened, buddy?" Tommy's voice was soft but clear as he explained the encounter with Officer Patterson. Jack listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each detail. When Tommy finished, Jack was quiet for a long moment. "Dad, I did everything right. I was polite, I kept my hands visible, I offered to show my ID. I don't understand why he shot me." Jack squeezed his son's hand gently. "You did everything perfect, Tommy. This isn't your fault." Dr. Martinez returned with more information. "Mr. Williams, I should mention that several hospital staff recognized your family name. We have 3 veterans working here who served under your command in different operations. They wanted me to tell you that Tommy is getting the best possible care." This reminded Jack of something important. His phone had been buzzing with messages since he arrived at the hospital. Word traveled fast in the military community, especially when it involved family members of decorated veterans. The first message was from Chief Rodriguez, his former teammate who now lived in Colorado Springs. "Jack, heard about Tommy through the veteran network? Whatever you need, brother." More messages followed. "Lieutenant Commander Chun from San Diego, Petty Officer Kim from Seattle, Master Chief Thompson from Virginia." Within 2 hours of the shooting, Jack's former SEAL team members were already making travel arrangements. Jack stepped into the hallway to make some calls. His first call was to Chief Rodriguez, who answered on the first ring. "Jack, how's the kid?" "He's stable, but it's serious." "Tony, something's not right about this whole thing. A cop shot my unarmed son for no reason." "I'm already in my car, brother. I'll be there in 2 hours." "Have you talked to the police yet?" "Not yet. I've been focused on Tommy." "Good. Don't talk to anyone until we're all there." "This smells like trouble." Jack's next call was to Chun, who was booking a flight from California. "Jack, I've been making some calls. Word is getting around about what happened. The team wants to know what you need." "I need the truth, Chun. My boy was walking home from work, and now he's fighting for his life in a hospital bed." "You'll have it. Kim is flying in tomorrow morning, and Thompson is driving from Denver. We're all coming." As Jack hung up, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. During his military service, he had always been the one leading the rescue missions, organizing the operations to help others. Now his team was coming to help him, and the feeling was both overwhelming and comforting. Back in Tommy's room, a nurse was checking his vital signs. She looked up when Jack entered. "Mr. Williams, I'm Jennifer. My husband served under you in Afghanistan. He wanted me to tell you that our entire family is praying for Tommy." Jack nodded gratefully. "Thank you. That means everything." As the evening wore on, Jack noticed something interesting. Hospital staff kept finding excuses to check on Tommy's room. A maintenance worker spent extra time fixing a light that wasn't broken. A cafeteria worker brought extra blankets. A security guard made frequent rounds past their door. Dr. Martinez explained it later. "Mr. Williams, your reputation precedes you. Everyone here knows what you did for our country. Some of these people lost family members overseas, and they know that people like Tommy come home safe because of people like you." This support felt good, but Jack's mind was focused on the bigger picture. His son had been shot by a police officer under suspicious circumstances. His military training told him that the next 48 hours would be critical, not just for Tommy's recovery, but for ensuring that the truth came out. Around midnight, Tommy was finally sleeping peacefully after his surgery. The doctor said it had gone well, but he would need several more operations and months of recovery. Jack sat in the uncomfortable hospital chair, watching his son's chest rise and fall steadily. His phone buzzed with another message, this time from Rodriguez. "Just arrived in town. Where do you want to meet?" Jack replied, "Hospital lobby. We need to talk." As he prepared to meet his old teammate, Jack thought about the officer who had shot his son. Patterson probably thought this was just another incident that would blow over. He probably didn't realize that he had just hurt the son of a man who spent 2 decades learning how to track down dangerous people in the most difficult places on earth. But Jack wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about justice. There was a difference, and his team would help him find it the right way. Tommy stirred in his sleep, and Jack leaned forward to check on him. Don't worry, son, he whispered. Dad's going to make sure the truth comes out. And I'm not going to do it alone. Chief Tony Rodriguez arrived at the hospital at 2 a.m., still wearing his work clothes from the auto shop he owned in Colorado Springs. When Jack saw his old teammate walking through the lobby, he felt a surge of emotion. Tony looked exactly the same, stocky, serious, with eyes that missed nothing. The two men embraced briefly, the kind of hug that said everything without words. They had saved each other's lives more times than either could count, in places most people couldn't pronounce. How's Tommy? Tony asked immediately. Surgery went well. He's sleeping now. Tony, I need to know what really happened out there. They sat in the quiet hospital lobby and Tony pulled out a small notebook. Even after leaving the military, he still kept detailed notes about everything. I've already started making calls. The incident happened at 8:47 p.m. on Maple Street. Multiple witnesses. I've got 3 phone numbers of people who saw the whole thing. You work fast, Jack said, feeling grateful but not surprised. I learn from the best, Tony replied with a slight smile. Jack, there's something else. I called Bobby Chun on the way here. She's landing at Denver Airport in 4 hours. And Mike Kim is driving through the night from Seattle. Should be here by morning. Jack felt a mix of emotions. These were people he hadn't seen in over a year, yet they had dropped everything to come help him. You guys didn't have to do this. Yes, we did, Tony said firmly. Tommy isn't just your son, Jack. He's family to all of us. We've heard you talk about him for years. We've seen his pictures at every reunion. That kid means something to us, too. At 6 a.m., Lieutenant Commander Bobby Chun walked into the hospital looking like she had just stepped off a military base instead of a red-eye flight. Chun was small, but tough, with a mind like a computer and an ability to spot lies from a mile away. She had left the Navy 3 years ago to become a private investigator in San Diego. Status report, she said, settling into a chair next to Jack and Tony. Jack filled her in on everything Tommy had told him about the shooting. Chun listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on her phone. I want to talk to the witnesses. Before the police do any more interviews, she said. Tony, did you get those phone numbers? I already called 2 of them. They're willing to talk. Mrs. Rodriguez even recorded part of it on her phone. Perfect. Jack, have you spoken to the police? Yet? A detective came by last night, but I told him I'd talk to him today when I was thinking more clearly. Chun nodded approvingly. Good, don't say anything until we've done our own investigation. Mike should be here soon, and then we can divide up the work. Mike Kim arrived an hour later, looking tired but determined. Kim was the tech expert of their old team, the guy who could hack into anything and find information that others missed. He now worked for a cybersecurity company in Seattle. Sorry, I'm late, he said, carrying a large duffel bag. Had to stop and pick up some equipment. Jack looked at the bag suspiciously. Mike, please tell me that's legal equipment. Kim grinned. Completely legal. Just some cameras, recording devices, and a few computers. All the same stuff private? Investigators use every day. The 4 former SEALs found an empty conference room in the hospital where they could talk privately. Jack felt like he was back in a military briefing, planning an operation with people he trusted completely. Chun spread out a map of the neighborhood on the table. Okay, here's what we know. Tommy was walking home from the community center here, on 5th Street. The shooting happened here, at the corner of Maple and 3rd. Multiple witnesses from these houses. Tony added his information. I talked to Mrs. Rodriguez and Mrs. Johnson this morning. Both of them say Tommy was completely cooperative and non-threatening. Mrs. Rodriguez has video of part of the incident. Kim opened his laptop. I've been doing research on Officer Patterson. This guy has a history, but it's been well hidden. 3 complaints in the last 2 years, but they all mysteriously disappeared from his official record. How do you know that? Jack asked. Let's just say I have friends in IT departments, Kim replied with a smile. The complaints were about excessive force and inappropriate behavior during traffic stops. All 3 complainants were young men of color. Chun studied the information. Pattern of behavior, that's important. Jack, we need to document everything about this case before anyone has a chance to cover it up or change their story. What's the plan? Jack asked, feeling like he was back in mission planning mode. We split up, Chun said. Tony, you and I will interview the witnesses and collect their statements. Mike, you work on the digital side. Any security cameras in the area, Patterson's background, police department records. Jack, you focus on Tommy and dealing with the official investigation. I want to do more than just sit around the hospital, Jack protested. You will be doing more, Chun replied. You're going to be the public face of this. Your reputation and Tommy's story are our strongest weapons, but we need you clean and above board. Let us do the digging. Kim pulled out several small devices. From his bag, these are recording devices. Legal to use as long as you're part of the conversation. Every time you talk to a police officer, detective, or lawyer, record it. Audio quality is perfect, and they're almost invisible. Tony handed Jack a burner phone. Use this for any calls you don't want traced back to you. The police might try to monitor your communications. Are we taking this too seriously? Jack asked. Maybe this was just a terrible mistake. Chen looked at him with the same expression she used to wear before dangerous missions. Jack, a police officer shot your unarmed son. In my experience, terrible mistakes don't usually get covered up, but terrible crimes do. They spent the next 2 hours planning their investigation like it was a military operation. Each person had specific tasks and responsibilities. They established communication protocols and backup plans as they prepared to leave the hospital. Jack felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving the military. He felt like part of a team again, working toward a mission that mattered, more than anything else in the world. One more thing, Tony said as they walked toward the parking garage. Master Chief Thompson is driving down from Denver. He should be here this afternoon. Jack stopped walking. Thompson is coming too? He insisted. Said something about how Tommy helped his grandson with a school project last year when they visited you. Jack remembered that day. Thompson's grandson had been struggling with a report about military history, and Tommy had spent hours helping him research and write it. The kid had ended up getting an A. This isn't just about you, Jack, Chun said quietly. Tommy touched. A lot of lives. He's a good kid who didn't deserve what happened to him. We're going to make sure everyone knows that. As Jack watched his old teammates drive away to begin their investigation, he felt a mixture of gratitude and concern. These people had once again dropped everything to help him, just like they had done countless times during their military service, but this time was different. This time, they weren't in some foreign country fighting strangers. They were in Jack's hometown, fighting for his son's justice. And Jack had a feeling that Officer Patterson had no idea what kind of people he had just made enemies of. Back in Tommy's room, Jack sat down next to his sleeping son. "Help is here, buddy," he whispered. "The best people I know are working too. Find out what really happened to you." Tommy's eyes fluttered open. "Dad? Who was that woman I heard talking earlier?" "That was Bobby Chun. She used to work with me. She's going to help us get some answers," Tommy smiled weakly. "Is she as tough?" "As you always said," Jack chuckled softly. "Tougher. Now get some rest. You're going to need your strength for what comes next." Bobby Chun knocked on Mrs. Rodriguez's door at exactly 9 a.m., carrying a professional-looking folder and wearing her most reassuring smile. She had learned that approaching witnesses required a delicate touch. Too aggressive and they would shut down. Too casual and they wouldn't take you seriously. "Mrs. Rodriguez? I'm Bobby Chun, a private investigator working for the Williams family. I understand you witnessed what happened to Tommy last night." Mrs. Rodriguez, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and graying hair, invited Chun inside. The living room was decorated with family photos and religious symbols, creating a warm and welcoming atmosphere. "That poor boy," Mrs. Rodriguez said, shaking her head. "I've known Tommy since he was little. He used to help me carry groceries when I had my hip surgery. What happened to him was wrong." Chun set up her recording device with Mrs. Rodriguez's permission and began taking detailed notes. "Can you tell me exactly what you saw?" "I was in my kitchen making dinner when I heard shouting outside. I looked out my window and saw that police officer yelling at Tommy, but Tommy wasn't doing anything wrong. He had his hands up and was being very polite. Did you hear what they were saying to each other? Some of it. Tommy was trying to explain that he lived in the neighborhood and offering to show his ID. The officer kept yelling at him not to move. Even though Tommy wasn't moving, then ... Mrs. Rodriguez paused, her eyes filling with tears. Take your time, Chun said gently. Then the officer shouted something about Tommy reaching for something, but I could see from my window that Tommy's hands were empty. He wasn't reaching for anything. Then there was this loud bang and Tommy fell down. Chun made careful notes of every detail. Mrs. Rodriguez, I understand you recorded part of this on your phone? Yes, I did. I started recording when I realized something bad was happening. She showed Chun the video on her phone. The footage was shaky but clear enough to see Tommy with his hands visible, being cooperative before the shooting occurred. This is very important evidence, Chun said. Would you be willing to give us a copy? Of course. Anything to help Tommy and his family. Meanwhile, Tony Rodriguez was 2 houses down, talking to Mrs. Johnson. The elderly woman was still shaken by what she had witnessed. I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years, Mrs. Johnson said, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders despite the warm morning. I've never seen anything like what happened last night. Can you describe Officer Patterson's behavior? Tony asked. He seemed angry from the moment he got out of his car. Not professional at all. I've seen police officers in our neighborhood before, and they're usually calm and polite. This man was different, aggressive, like he was looking for a fight. What did you think when you saw Tommy? Mrs. Johnson's face softened. Tommy is such a good boy. He helps me with my yard work sometimes, never accepts any money for it. His father raised him right. There was no reason for any officer to treat him that way. Tony documented everything carefully. Like Cheen, he had learned the importance of getting witness statements while memories were still fresh, and before anyone could pressure witnesses to change their stories. Across town, Mike Kim was in his rental car outside the police station, using specialized equipment to monitor police communications. He wasn't breaking any laws. The equipment he was using was available to any private investigator, but his military training helped him understand what he was hearing. Unit 247, report to the station for debriefing. Came through the radio. Kim checked his notes. Unit 247 was Patterson's call sign. He started his car and followed the police cruiser back to the station. Maintaining a careful distance. At the police station, Kim set up surveillance from a coffee shop across the street. Using a long-range camera, he documented Patterson's arrival and noted the time. He also photographed everyone who went in and out of the building, building a record of who Patterson might be talking to. His laptop was running several programs simultaneously. One was searching public records for any information about Patterson's background, employment history, and previous assignments. Another was scanning social media for any posts or comments Patterson might have made. Interesting, Kim muttered as he found Patterson's social media accounts. The officer had made several controversial posts over the past year, including complaints about political correctness and sharing articles from questionable news sources. Nothing explicitly illegal, but it painted a picture of someone with strong biases. Back at the hospital, Master Chief Danny Thompson had arrived and was meeting with Jack in the family conference room. Thompson was a large man with gray hair and a commanding presence that made people instinctively respect him. Jack, I came as soon as I heard, Thompson said, gripping his former teammate's shoulder. How's our boy doing? Better. The doctors say he'll recover fully, but it's going to take time. Jack appreciated that Thompson referred to Tommy as our boy. It reminded him that the bonds formed in military service extended to family members. What do we know about this Patterson character? Jack filled him in on what the team had discovered so far. Thompson listened with the intensity he had once brought to mission briefings. I've been making some calls on the drive down here, Thompson said. I know people in law enforcement, and I've been asking around about this incident. Word is already spreading that this shooting might not have been justified. What are you hearing? Mixed reactions. Some cops are already defending Patterson, saying the public doesn't understand the split-second decisions officers have to make. But others are saying this looks bad, especially with Tommy being completely unarmed and cooperative. Thompson pulled out his phone. I also reached out to some media contacts. There's a reporter from Channel 7 News who's very interested in this story. She specializes in police accountability issues. I'm not sure I'm ready to talk to reporters yet, Jack said. You don't have to be. But when you are ready, it's good to know we have someone who will tell the story fairly. Chun and Tony returned to the hospital around noon with detailed witness statements and copies of the video footage. The team gathered in the same conference room they had used that morning. The witness statements are consistent, Chun reported. Everyone agrees that Tommy was cooperative and non-threatening. Mrs. Rodriguez's video clearly shows that Tommy wasn't reaching for anything when Patterson fired. Kim added his findings. Patterson has a history of complaints that were swept under the rug. His social media posts suggest someone with racial bias issues. And I observed him at the police station this morning. He met with his union representative and someone who looked like a lawyer. They're already building his defense, Thompson noted. That means they know this shooting wasn't justified. Jack felt a mix of anger and determination. So what's our next step? We need to get ahead of their narrative, Chun said. They're going to try to paint Tommy as threatening somehow, or claim that Patterson felt his life was in danger. We need to establish the truth before they have time to create their version of events. Tony had been studying the neighborhood map. I want to canvass the entire area again. There might be other witnesses we haven't found yet, or security cameras that caught the incident. Good idea, Kim agreed. I'll check with all the houses and businesses in a 4-block radius. Someone might have exterior security cameras that recorded the incident. Thompson stood up. I'm going to reach out to some of my contacts in the veteran community. This story needs to get out, and it needs to be told correctly. A decorated veteran's son being shot while walking home from work, that's something people will pay attention to. As the meeting broke up, Jack felt like they were finally making progress. His son was still in the hospital, but the truth was starting to emerge. Patterson had shot an innocent young man, and Jack's team was gathering the evidence to prove it. One more thing, Chun said as they prepared to leave. I think we should start thinking about Patterson's next moves. If he's smart, he's going to try to disappear or at least lay low until this blows over. He won't disappear, Jack said. With certainty. Men like Patterson don't think they've done anything wrong. He'll stay around, probably try to justify what he did. Thompson nodded in agreement. Jack's right. This guy thinks he's the victim here. He'll want to tell his side of the story. Then we need to be ready for him, Kim said, patting his bag of surveillance equipment. As Jack walked back to Tommy's room, he felt something he hadn't felt since the shooting. Hope. Not just hope that Tommy would recover, but hope that the truth would come out and justice would be served. Tommy was awake when Jack entered the room, looking much better than he had the night before. Dad, I heard voices in the hallway. Are those your old Navy friends? Some of them, yes. They came to help us figure out what happened. Tommy smiled weakly. Are they as tough as you always said? Jack thought about Chen's methodical investigation skills, Tony's ability to get people to trust him, Kim's technical expertise, and Thompson's connections throughout the military and law enforcement communities. Tougher, Jack replied. And they're all working to make sure Officer Patterson can't hurt anyone else the way he hurt you. Officer Rick Patterson lived in a modest 2-story house on the outskirts of town, in a neighborhood that was mostly other police officers and city workers. He had chosen the location specifically because he wanted to be around his own kind. People who understood the stress of law enforcement work. But as Patterson pulled into his driveway on Thursday evening, he noticed something that made his stomach tighten with anxiety. There was a man in a baseball cap sitting in a car across the street, apparently reading a newspaper. Nothing unusual about that except Patterson's police instincts told him the man was watching his house. Patterson tried to shake off the feeling as he walked to his front door. The shooting had happened 2 days ago, and he had been on administrative leave while the investigation took place. His union lawyer had told him everything would be fine, that these things usually blew over in a few weeks. But when Patterson looked out his kitchen window an hour later, the man in the baseball cap was still there. Tony Rodriguez had been watching Patterson's house since 4 p.m., taking careful notes about the officer's routines and behavior. He had positioned himself where he could see both the front and side of the house, and he was documenting everything with timestamps. 5:47 p.m. Patterson arrives home in personal vehicle, blue Ford pickup truck. Appears agitated. 6:15 p.m. Patterson. Visible in kitchen window. Appears to be making phone calls. 6:43 p.m. to Patterson, looks out window directly at surveillance position. Makes eye contact briefly. Tony smiled slightly. Patterson was starting to realize he was being watched. Good. That was exactly what they wanted at the hospital. Jack was meeting with Detective Williams, no relation, who was officially investigating the shooting. The detective was a tired-looking man in his 50s who seemed more interested in getting paperwork filled out than finding the truth. Mr. Williams, I understand your son claims Officer Patterson shot him without justification. The detective said, barely looking up from his notepad. It's not a claim, Jack replied calmly. It's what happened. We have multiple witnesses and video evidence. Well, Officer Patterson tells a different story. He says your son was acting suspiciously and appeared to be reaching for something. That could have been a weapon. Jack kept his voice level, but inside he was furious. Detective, my son was walking home from work. He's never been arrested, never been in trouble with the law. He's a college student who volunteers at a community center. I understand you're upset, but these situations are often more complicated than they appear. Jack realized that this detective wasn't really investigating, he was just going through the motions. Fortunately, Jack's team was conducting their own investigation. Meanwhile, Mike Kim had set up a sophisticated surveillance operation from a rented room in a nearby hotel. Using long-range cameras and listening devices, he could monitor Patterson's house from half a mile away. Kim's equipment was recording everything, every visitor, every phone call made near a window, every time Patterson stepped outside. It was all legal surveillance, the kind private investigators used every day. But Kim's military training made him much more effective than most civilian investigators. At 8 p.m., Kim noticed Patterson peeking through his curtains again. The officer was clearly nervous about the surveillance, which was exactly what they had hoped for. Kim sent a text message to the team group chat. Target is aware of surveillance, exhibiting signs of stress and paranoia. Bobby Chung was positioned on the other side of Patterson's neighborhood, watching the back of his house. She had rented a car and was dressed like a suburban mom, completely invisible to anyone who might be watching. From her position, Chun could see that Patterson had installed new locks on his back door and was keeping all his curtains closed. These were the actions of someone who felt threatened, someone who knew he had done something wrong. Chun's phone buzzed with a message from Tony. He's making a lot of phone calls. Wish we could hear what he's saying, Chun replied. Patience. Nervous people make mistakes. At 10 p.m., Master Chief Thompson relieved Tony on surveillance duty. Thompson parked his rental car in a different location but maintained visual contact with Patterson's house. He was older than the others and more patient, capable of sitting still for hours without getting bored or distracted. Thompson had done surveillance work during his military career, watching terrorist safe houses in Iraq and Afghanistan. Compared to those dangerous assignments, watching a suburban police officer was almost relaxing, but Thompson's peaceful night was interrupted at 11:30 p.m. when Patterson suddenly burst out of his house and got into his truck. Thompson quickly started his car and followed at a distance, using techniques he had learned during covert operations overseas. Patterson drove to a 24-hour diner on the other side of town, where he met with two other men. Thompson recognized one of them as another police officer from photos Kim had taken at the police station. The other man was wearing an expensive suit and carrying a briefcase, probably a lawyer. Thompson parked where he could see into the diner and took photos of the meeting with a long-range camera. The three men talked intensely for over an hour. With Patterson doing most of the talking and gesturing frantically when the meeting ended, Thompson followed Patterson back to his house, noting that the officer kept checking his rearview mirror. Patterson was definitely paranoid now, constantly looking over his shoulder. The next morning, the team met at a small cafe near the hospital to share information and plan their next moves. "Patterson knows we're watching him," Tony reported. "He's acting like a man with something to hide." Kim showed them photographs from his surveillance equipment. "Look at these pictures from yesterday evening. He's installed new security cameras on his house and changed all his locks. That's not the behavior of someone who thinks he did nothing." "Wrong," Chun added her observations. "He's also been making a lot of phone calls. I counted at least 12 different calls yesterday, all lasting more than 10 minutes. Thompson shared his report about the late-night meeting. He met with his union representative and what looked like a private attorney. They talked for over an hour, and Patterson seemed very agitated. Jack studied all the information his team had gathered. "So what does this tell us?" "It tells us that Patterson is scared," Chun said. "He knows the shooting wasn't justified, and he's trying to figure out how to protect himself. It also tells us that the police department and the union are already working on his defense," Thompson added. "That meeting last night was about strategy, not truth." Kim pulled out his laptop. "I've been monitoring police communications, and there's definitely something happening behind the scenes. They're treating this like a crisis management situation, not a routine investigation." "How long do we keep up the surveillance?" Tony asked Dot about it for a moment. "Until he makes a mistake, or until we have enough evidence to prove what really happened. Patterson shot my son, and he's going to be held accountable for it." "The psychological pressure is definitely working," Chun observed. "Guilty people can't handle being watched for very long. They either confess or they do something stupid." "Let's hope he does something stupid," Thompson said grimly. That afternoon, Patterson called in sick to work, even though he was already on administrative leave. His supervisor noted in the report that Patterson sounded extremely stressed and possibly unstable. At 3 p.m., Patterson made another mistake. Feeling claustrophobic in his house, he decided to go for a drive to clear his head. But everywhere he went, he noticed cars that seemed to be following him. Tony was following him from a distance when Patterson suddenly pulled over at a gas station and got out of his truck. Patterson walked directly toward Tony's car, his face red with anger. "I know you're following me." Patterson shouted, "This is harassment." Tony rolled down his window calmly. "I'm sorry, officer. I think you're mistaken. I'm just getting gas." "Don't lie to me. You people think you can intimidate me, but I know my rights." Other customers at the gas station stopped to watch the confrontation. Someone started recording with their phone. Tony remained completely calm. "Officer, I think you might be under a lot of stress. Maybe you should talk to someone about it." Patterson's face turned even redder. "You have no idea what kind of stress I'm under. I'm a good cop who was just doing his job." "I'm sure you believe that," Tony replied quietly. Patterson realized he was making a scene and quickly got back in his truck. But the damage was done. His outburst had been recorded by multiple witnesses, and it showed a man who was clearly unstable and feeling guilty about something. That evening, the team gathered again to review the day's events. "He's cracking," Chun observed. "That outburst at the gas station shows he's losing control." "Good," Jack said. "Maybe now he'll make the kind of mistake that will help us prove what really happened to Tommy." "The surveillance is working," Kim agreed. "He knows he's being watched by people who know what they're doing, and it's driving him crazy." Thompson nodded. "In my experience, guilty people can't handle pressure for very long. They either confess or they do something that exposes the truth." As Jack returned to the hospital that evening, he felt like they were finally making progress. Patterson was acting like a guilty man, and every day he remained under surveillance increased the chances that he would make a critical error. 3 days after the gas station incident, Officer Patterson was becoming increasingly desperate. The constant surveillance had turned his life into a nightmare. Every time he left his house, he spotted the watchers. When he went to the grocery store, there was a woman with a shopping cart who seemed to be following him. When he visited his mother, a man in a jogger's outfit ran past her house 6 times. Patterson's wife, Linda, was getting worried about his behavior. "Rick, you're acting paranoid. You barely sleep, you're always looking out the windows, and you're jumping at every little sound. They're watching me, Linda. Those people are everywhere." "Who's watching you? The Williams family?" "Rick, their son is still in the hospital. They're probably focused on his recovery, not following you around." But Patterson knew better. These weren't just grieving family members. These were professionals, people who knew exactly what they were doing. The way they rotated positions, changed vehicles, and maintained perfect distance told him he was dealing with trained operatives. What Patterson didn't know was that his paranoia was making him careless in other ways. Mike Kim's electronic surveillance had picked up several phone conversations that were very revealing. "I need more help with this situation," Patterson had said during a call to his union representative. "These people are making my life hell, and I can't think straight. Rick, just stick to the story we discussed. You felt threatened, you thought he was reaching for a weapon, and you responded according to your training." "But what if they have evidence that contradicts that?" "What kind of evidence could they have? You said there were no cameras in the area." "There weren't any official cameras, but some of the neighbors might have been recording." This conversation was crucial because it showed Patterson was worried about evidence, which suggested he knew his official story wasn't true. Bobby Chun had been analyzing all of Patterson's movements and communications, looking for patterns. She noticed that he made the same drive every Tuesday and Thursday evening, always to the same location, a bar called Murphy's Tavern on the other side of town. "He's meeting someone there regularly," Chun reported to the team. "Same time, same day, same route, that's not coincidence." Tony Rodriguez volunteered to check out Murphy's Tavern. He arrived early on Thursday evening and positioned himself where he could observe Patterson's usual meeting. The bar was a typical cop hangout, dark, quiet, with police memorabilia on the walls. At 7:30 p.m., Patterson arrived and sat in a corner booth with 2 other men. Tony recognized them from Kim's surveillance photos, Sergeant Davis from Patterson's precinct and Captain Morrison, a higher-ranking officer. Tony couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language told the story. Patterson was animated and stressed, gesturing frantically while the other 2 men listened with serious expressions. At one point, Captain Morrison leaned forward and pointed his finger at Patterson, clearly giving him instructions. The meeting lasted 45 minutes, and when it ended, Patterson looked even more agitated than when he had arrived. Tony followed him back to his house, noting that Patterson kept checking his mirrors and took several unnecessary turns, trying to spot surveillance. Meanwhile, the media attention around Tommy's case was growing. Master Chief Thompson had reached out to his contacts in the veteran community, and word was spreading quickly. Channel 7 News had run a story about the shooting, focusing on Tommy's volunteer work and his father's military service. The story painted a clear picture. A decorated war hero's son had been shot while walking home from work, despite being completely cooperative with police. The contrast between Tommy's clean record and Patterson's history of complaints was becoming impossible to ignore. Detective Williams, who was officially investigating the case, was feeling pressure from multiple directions. His superiors wanted a case to go away quietly, but the media attention was making that impossible. The witness statements and video evidence were also much stronger than he had initially thought. On Friday morning, Detective Williams visited Jack at the hospital with some surprising news. "Mr. Williams, I've completed my preliminary investigation into the shooting of your son. I have to tell you, the evidence doesn't support Officer Patterson's version of events." Jack felt a surge of hope. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm recommending that the district attorney review this case for possible criminal charges. The witness statements and video evidence clearly show that your son posed no threat to Officer Patterson." This was the breakthrough Jack had been hoping for, but he kept his expression neutral. "I appreciate you doing a thorough investigation, Detective. I want you to know that not all of us in law enforcement approve of what Officer Patterson did. Most of us take our oath to protect and serve very seriously." After Detective Williams left, Jack immediately called his team with the news. The official investigation was finally supporting what they had known from the beginning. Patterson had shot an innocent young man without justification, but Patterson's reaction to this development was swift and predictable. Within hours of Detective Williams filing his report, Patterson was making frantic phone calls to everyone he could think of who might help him. Kim's surveillance equipment captured one particularly revealing conversation between Patterson and his lawyer. "They're going to charge me, aren't they?" Patterson said, his voice shaking. "It's possible. The evidence isn't good, Rick. Multiple witnesses, video footage, and your victim has a completely clean record. But I followed protocol. I felt threatened." "Rick, I need you to be honest with me. Did you really feel threatened, or were you just angry?" There was a long pause before Patterson answered. I don't know anymore. Everything happened so fast." This admission was crucial. It showed that Patterson himself wasn't sure whether the shooting was justified, which contradicted his official statement. That evening, Patterson made his biggest mistake yet. Feeling cornered and desperate, he decided to visit one of the witnesses, who had given a statement against him. He drove to Mrs. Rodriguez's house and knocked on her door. Mrs. Rodriguez was startled to see the officer who had shot Tommy standing on her front porch. "Officer Patterson, what are you doing here?" "Ma'am, I need to talk to you about what you think you saw the other night. I think there might be some confusion about what actually happened." Mrs. Rodriguez felt intimidated but tried to stay calm. "I know what I saw, officer. Tommy was being cooperative and you shot him anyway. Sometimes things look different from different angles. Maybe you didn't see everything clearly." "Are you asking me to change my statement?" "I'm just asking you to think carefully about what you really saw." Unknown to Patterson, Mrs. Rodriguez's grandson was visiting and had started recording the conversation on his phone the moment he saw the police officer at the door. The entire conversation was captured on video. After Patterson left, Mrs. Rodriguez immediately called Bobby Chun. "That officer just came to my house and tried to get me to change my statement." Chun was at Mrs. Rodriguez's house within 20 minutes, and they reviewed the video her grandson had recorded. It clearly showed Patterson attempting to intimidate a witness, which was a serious crime. "This is exactly what we needed," Chun told the team when they gathered that evening. "Patterson just committed witness intimidation, and we have it on video." "He's panicking," Tony observed. "The surveillance is working exactly like we hoped it would." Kim had more information from his electronic surveillance. He's also been researching ways to leave the country. "I found searches on his computer for passport renewal and flights to countries without extradition treaties. He's thinking about running," Thompson concluded. "That tells us everything we need to know about his guilt." Jack felt a mix of satisfaction and concern. They were gathering the evidence they needed to prove Patterson's guilt. But the officer's increasingly desperate behavior was also making him unpredictable. "We need to be careful," Jack warned his team. "Desperate people do desperate things. Patterson knows he's in trouble, and that makes him dangerous," Chun agreed. "We should notify Detective Williams about the witness intimidation incident. That's a felony, and it shows a pattern of trying to cover up the truth." The next morning, Detective Williams received the video of Patterson's visit to Mrs. Rodriguez. After watching it twice, he made a decision that surprised everyone. "I'm placing Officer Patterson under arrest immediately," he told his supervisor. "He's committed witness intimidation, and I believe he's a flight risk." When Patterson was arrested at his house that morning, he broke down completely. The constant surveillance, the media pressure, and the mounting evidence had finally overwhelmed him. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he sobbed as the handcuffs were placed on his wrists. "I just made a mistake." The arrest was captured by news cameras that had been staking out Patterson's house since the story broke. The image of the disgraced officer being led away in handcuffs was broadcast on every local news station. At the hospital, Jack and Tommy watched the news coverage together. Tommy was finally strong enough to sit up for extended periods, and his recovery was progressing well. "Dad, I feel bad for him," Tommy said, watching Patterson on the television. Jack looked at his son with pride. Even after everything Patterson had put him through, Officer Rick Patterson sat in the county jail cell, staring at the concrete wall and trying to figure out how his life had fallen apart so quickly. Just 1 week ago, he had been a police officer with 8 years on the force. Now he was facing charges of assault with a deadly weapon, witness intimidation, and violation of civil rights. His lawyer, David Brennan, visited him on Tuesday morning with news that made Patterson's stomach sink even further. "Rick, the district attorney is not interested in any plea deals right now. They want to take this case to trial. But I'm a police officer. Don't I get any consideration for my years of service?" Brennan looked uncomfortable. "Rick, that actually works against us now. Police officers are held to a higher standard, and the evidence against you is overwhelming. We have multiple witnesses, video footage, and your own attempt to intimidate." "Mrs. Rodriguez," Patterson buried his face in his hands. "This is all because of that Williams family and their military friends. They've been harassing me since this whole thing started." "Actually, they haven't harassed you at all," Brennan corrected. "Everything they did was completely legal. They conducted surveillance, gathered evidence, and documented your behavior. It's exactly what any competent private investigation team would do. So what are my options? Honestly, your best option is to consider cooperating with the prosecution. If you're willing to admit what really happened and show genuine remorse, we might be able to negotiate a reduced sentence." Patterson's face turned red with anger. "You want me to admit that I was wrong, that I shot that kid without justification?" "Rick, the evidence shows that's exactly what happened. Every witness says Tommy Williams was cooperative and non-threatening. The video clearly shows his hands were empty when you fired." "I felt threatened. He was in a high-crime area, and he fit the description of a suspect." Brennan pulled out a folder. "Rick, I've reviewed the dispatch logs. There was no high-crime area alert that night, and Tommy Williams looked nothing like any suspect they were searching for. You stopped him because you wanted to, not because you had any legitimate reason." The truth was finally coming out, even from Patterson's own lawyer. He had shot Tommy Williams not because he felt threatened, but because he was angry and looking for someone to take it out on. Meanwhile, at the district attorney's office, prosecutor Jennifer Walsh was preparing what she believed would be one of the most important cases of her career. The evidence was strong, but she knew that prosecuting a police officer was always challenging. "We need to be absolutely perfect on this," she told her team. "Defense attorneys always try to make police shooting cases about split-second decisions and officer safety. We need to show that this wasn't a split-second decision, it was a deliberate act by someone who was out of control." The prosecution team had been working closely with Jack Williams and his team, who had provided crucial evidence and witness statements. Walsh was impressed by how professionally they had conducted their investigation. "It's unusual to have this quality of evidence in a police shooting case," Walsh told her assistant prosecutor. "Usually we're dealing with conflicting witness statements and no video. This time we have everything." Back at the hospital, Tommy was making remarkable progress. He was walking around his room and starting physical therapy. The doctor said he would be able to go home within a few days. Jack was sitting with his son when Detective Williams visited with an update on the case. "Mr. Williams, I wanted to let you know that Officer Patterson's bail has been denied. The judge considered him a flight risk based on evidence that he was researching travel to countries without extradition treaties." "Good," Jack replied. "What happens next?" "The grand jury will meet next week to consider formal charges. Based on the evidence, I'm confident they'll vote to indict." Tommy spoke up from his hospital bed. "Detective, will I have to testify at the trial?" "Probably, son. But don't worry, you'll have plenty of support, and the prosecutor will prepare you for everything." After Detective Williams left, Tommy was quiet for a while. Finally, he looked at his father. "Dad, I'm not angry at Officer Patterson anymore." Jack was surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not carrying anger about what he did to me. I just want to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Jack felt proud of his son's maturity and strength. "Tommy, that's exactly the right attitude. This case isn't about revenge. It's about justice and preventing future harm." The next day brought unexpected news. Patterson's cellmate, a career criminal named Bobby Torres, had been listening to Patterson's phone calls and conversations with his lawyer. Torres had decided to contact the prosecutor's office with information. Patterson's been talking to anyone. Who will listen, Torres told Prosecutor Walsh during a recorded interview. He admitted that he shot the kid because he was having a bad day and was angry about his divorce proceedings. He specifically said that? Walsh asked. Yeah, he said something like, I wasn't thinking straight because of all the stress in my life, and I took it out on that kid. He also said he knew the shooting wasn't justified, but thought he could cover it up. This was the confession that Walsh had been hoping for. Even though it came from a jailhouse informant, it corroborated all the other evidence they had gathered. When Brennan visited Patterson the next day, he delivered the devastating news about Torres's statement. Rick, your cellmate has been recording your conversations and sharing them with the prosecution. He has you on tape admitting that the shooting wasn't justified. Patterson's face went white. That's not what I meant. I was just venting, trying to deal with the stress. It doesn't matter what you meant. You confessed to an unjustified shooting, and now they have it on tape. Can't we argue that it's not admissible because I didn't know I was being recorded? Rick, you were in jail talking to another inmate? There's no expectation of privacy in that situation. This confession is going to be the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. Patterson finally realized that his situation was hopeless. All his attempts to cover up what had happened had only made things worse. The surveillance by Jack's military friends had pressured him into making mistakes, and now those mistakes. We're going to send him to prison. What kind of sentence am I looking at? Patterson asked quietly. With the assault charge, witness intimidation, and civil rights violation, you're probably looking at 8 to 12 years. Maybe more if the judge wants to send a message about police accountability. That evening, Patterson called his wife Linda from jail. It was the most difficult conversation of his life. Linda, I need to tell you something. I'm going to plead guilty to the charges. What? Rick, I thought you said you were innocent. I wasn't innocent, Linda. I shot that kid because I was angry, not because I was threatened. And then I tried to cover it up, which only made everything worse? Linda was quiet for a long moment. Rick, I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm the same person I've always been. I made some terrible decisions, and now I have to face the consequences. I can't do this anymore, Rick. I'm filing for divorce. Patterson hung up the phone, feeling completely alone. He had lost his job, his freedom, his wife, and his reputation. All because he had chosen to shoot an innocent young man who was walking home from work. The next morning, Patterson told his lawyer he was ready to plead guilty to all charges. I want to apologize to the Williams family, Patterson said. I want them to know that what I did was wrong and that Tommy didn't deserve any of this. Brennan was relieved. Rick, I think that's the right decision. It won't undo what happened, but at least you're taking responsibility for your actions. One word. Reached Jack that Patterson was planning to plead guilty, he felt a complex mix of emotions. He was glad that the truth was finally being acknowledged. But he also felt sad that it had taken so long and caused so much pain. Jack called his team together one last time to share the news. Patterson is pleading guilty to all charges, he told them. It's over, Bobby Chun smiled with satisfaction. The surveillance worked exactly like we planned. We kept pressure on him until he cracked. Tony Rodriguez nodded. He made every mistake we hoped he would make. The witness intimidation, the jailhouse confession, the attempt to flee, it all added up to a case he couldn't fight. Mike Kim closed his surveillance equipment for the final time. Justice is finally being served. Master Chief Thompson raised his coffee cup. To Tommy Williams, who showed more courage and grace than any of us had a right to expect. When Jack returned to the hospital to tell Tommy about Patterson's decision to plead guilty, he found his son reading a book and looking stronger than he had since the shooting. Dad, I heard the news from Detective Williams. Officer Patterson is going to admit what he did. How do you feel about that? Jack asked. Tommy thought for a moment. Relieved, I guess. It means we won't have to go through a long trial, and other people won't have to relive this whole experience. Are you disappointed that he didn't apologize sooner? No, Dad, I think he was scared and didn't know how to deal with what he had done. I'm just glad he's finally telling the truth. Jack sat down next to his son's bed, feeling proud of the young man Tommy had become. Despite everything he had been through, Tommy still had compassion for others, even the person who had hurt him. 6 months after the shooting, the courthouse was packed with people who had come to witness justice being served. Tommy Williams walked into the courtroom supported by his father, moving slowly but steadily. His recovery had been remarkable. Though he still had some physical therapy ahead of him, Judge Patricia Martinez called the court to order and looked directly at Rick Patterson, who stood at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit. His appearance had changed dramatically during his time in jail. He looked thinner, older, and completely defeated. Mr. Patterson, you have agreed to plead guilty to charges of assault with a deadly weapon, witness, intimidation, and violation of civil rights under color of law. Do you understand the consequences of this plea? Yes, Your Honor, Patterson replied in a voice barely above a whisper. Before I accept this plea, I want to hear from you directly. Do you accept responsibility for shooting Tommy Williams without justification? Patterson looked across the courtroom at Tommy and Jack Williams. For the first time since the shooting, he made direct eye contact with the young man he had nearly killed. Yes, Your Honor, I shot Tommy Williams even though he posed no threat to me. I was angry about my personal problems, and I took that anger out on an innocent person. What I did was wrong, and I'm sorry. Judge Martinez nodded. Mr. Williams, you have the right to make a victim impact statement before sentencing. Would you like to do so? Tommy stood up slowly, using his father's arm for support. He walked to the podium and looked directly at Patterson before beginning. To speak, Officer Patterson, 6 months ago you shot me while I was walking home from work. I was polite to you, I cooperated with everything you asked me to do, and I never threatened you in any way. But you shot me anyway. Patterson kept his eyes down, unable to maintain eye contact. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital. I had 4 surgeries. I missed an entire semester of college. My family spent thousands of dollars on medical bills, and for months I had nightmares about what happened. Tommy paused and took a deep breath before continuing. But I want you to know that I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, it wasn't. And not because you don't deserve to be punished. You do. I forgive you because carrying anger and hatred would hurt me more than it would hurt you. Several people in the courtroom were crying, including Patterson's ex-wife Linda, who had come to support Tommy's family. I hope that during your time in prison, you think about what led you to make such a terrible decision. I hope you get help for whatever problems caused you to hurt me. And I hope that when you get out, you become the kind of person who protects people instead of hurting them. Tommy returned to his seat next to his father, who squeezed his hand proudly. Judge Martinez then addressed Patterson directly. Mr. Patterson, in my 20 years on the bench, I have seen many cases of police misconduct. But this case is particularly troubling because it shows a complete disregard for the oath you took to protect and serve. She reviewed the evidence that had been presented, including the witness statements, video footage, and Patterson's own confession. The evidence shows that you stopped Mr. Williams for no legitimate reason, escalated the situation unnecessarily, and then shot him when he posed no threat to you whatsoever. Your subsequent attempts to intimidate witnesses show a pattern of behavior that cannot be tolerated in law enforcement. Patterson stood as the judge prepared to pronounce his sentence. Mr. Patterson, I hereby sentence you to 10 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 7 years. You are also permanently barred from working in law enforcement in any capacity. As the bailiff led Patterson away in handcuffs, he looked one more time at Tommy Williams and mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." Tommy nodded in acknowledgement, showing a grace that impressed everyone in the courtroom outside the courthouse. Jack Williams was surrounded by reporters who wanted to know how the family felt about the sentence. We're satisfied that justice has been served, Jack told them. Officer Patterson will be held accountable for his actions, and hopefully this case will help prevent similar incidents in the future. One reporter asked, "Mr. Williams, what role did your military background play in pursuing this case?" Jack thought carefully before answering. "My military training taught me the importance of discipline, accountability, and protecting innocent people. When someone hurt my son, I used those same principles to make sure the truth came out." What about the surveillance operation your team conducted? Some people are calling it vigilante justice. Everything we did was completely legal and ethical, Jack replied firmly. We gathered evidence, documented Patterson's behavior, and turned everything over to law enforcement. We never took the law into our own hands. We just made sure the law was applied fairly. Bobby Chung, who was standing nearby, added, "The surveillance served its purpose. It kept pressure on Patterson until he made the mistakes that revealed the truth about what happened." 3 months after Patterson's sentencing, an unexpected development occurred. The police department announced a comprehensive review of all cases Patterson had worked on during his 8-year career. The review was prompted by the discovery of additional complaints that had been buried in his personnel file.